Okay, bad news. You got taken. No time to explain. Let's just get out of here. So you find yourself in a dark cell with a dirt floor and a small window at twice your height. There's no food or water, but there's a shovel. Why did they leave the shovel? Don't ask me, I don't know. Just be happy you have it. However, you can't dig your way out because the walls go a long way underground. So, how do you get out? You can still dig and make a high dirt pile that will make you reach the window and get out of there. So you do just that and find yourself in a dark corridor. You have nothing to do but to go straight, hoping that sooner or later you'll find the exit and get out of this creepy place. Half an hour later, you approach a metal door. You have to enter the passcode, but here's a hint. Berlin, 600. Paris, 400. London, 600. Rome, 200. Toronto, what's the passcode? Each consonant in the word gives 200 points, while each vowel takes away 100 points. In the word Toronto, there are 4 consonants that give 800 together. 3 vowels take away 300 points. So the passcode is 500. The door clicks and you leave another obstacle behind. Soon, you approach 3 more doors. Behind the first one, there's an iron block with a movement sensor that will crush everyone who enters. Behind the second door, there's an electric shocker that never misses. Behind the third door, there's broken glass all over the floor. Which way do you choose? You pick the third door, obviously. You're wearing some boots, right? So, walking on the glass is definitely not going to be too hard of a task. You follow the tunnel till you reach the next room. As you step in there, a metal cage falls down from the ceiling and traps you inside. However, there are 3 buttons there. The red button will open the cage, but it'll also open a door with a hungry lion. The blue button will fill the cage with water for 10 minutes, and only then will it open the door. However, keep in mind that people can only live 7 minutes without oxygen. The green button will set the room on fire, but will open the cage door in 5 minutes. Which one do you choose? You should choose the blue button. The water won't be able to fill the cage because it will just splash outside. You'll only have to wait 10 minutes until the door opens, and you'll be able to get out safely. You turn right and immediately bump into a huge guard. Your heart skips a beat and you get paralyzed with fear. To your surprise, the guard looks down at you and asks, "Want to pass?" Speechless, you just nod. Okay. You see, no one here wants to play riddles with me. If you solve one of my riddles, I'll let you go and won't tell anyone I've seen you. Deal? You nod again, and here comes your riddle. What is that invention that lets you see right through walls? That's a window, of course. The guard smiles and says, "Beware of the vampires." Then he moves aside, letting you go. Wow, that was close. And vampires? This gives you chills, but you have to keep moving and get out. And again, another door that requires a passcode. Can you crack it? There's a hint again. You should continue the sequence. OTTFFSSENT. Each of these letters is the first letter of the numbers. O for 1, T for 2, T for 3, then 4, 5, and so on. The last stands for 10, so the next 4 are ETTF, 11, 12, 13, and 14. Yep, that's correct. The door clicks open. Move! You get into a huge dark room. All the light comes from the candles the room is filled with. The problem is that there are 4 ways, and again, you don't know which one to take. Suddenly, each of the doors opens and 4 people walk into the room. There are 2 men, 1 woman, and 1 teenage girl. They all say they're prisoners too, and the other 3 are vampires. Who do you trust? You should trust the second man. He's the only one who casts a shadow from the light of the candles. The other 3 don't, so they must be vampires. So you rush to the man and you shut the door behind yourself. It'll probably slow them down for a while. As you're running, the man tells you he's been here for at least 3 days. The next obstacle is something he couldn't solve by himself, so he couldn't get out. There's just one try, and if you fail, the exit gets blocked for 24 hours. Finally, you come across another door with a robot guarding it. To let you go, the robot needs you to say the password. The tricky thing is that the password is different each time. The man said that as he was hiding in the room, he saw the vampires passing it twice. The first time, the robot said 12, and the vampire said 6. The other time, the robot said 6, and the vampire said 3. When the man approached the robot the last time, the robot said 8. The man replied 4, but the robot didn't let him in. The door got blocked, so it wasn't the right answer. You nod and approach the robot. The robot says 4. What is your answer? The answer is 4. The rule isn't dividing the number by 2, but saying the number of letters in the word. Your answer is accepted. The robot opens the door and lets you go. Again, another dark room. But as you step into it, you get surrounded by 8 hungry dogs. In the middle, there's a meat cake standing so high on the table that the dogs can't reach it. To calm them down and make them your friends before they make you their dinner, you have to feed them the cake. But here's a tricky thing. The knife is magical and can only make 3 cuts. After 3 cuts, it disappears. Your task is to divide the cake into 8 equal pieces with these 3 cuts. How can you manage that? With 1 cut, you cut the cake in half and get 2 pieces. Then you make another perpendicular cut and get 4 pieces. With your last move, you have to cut the cake in the middle horizontally, splitting each of the 4 pieces into 2 at once. Great job! Now, give each of the dogs a piece of cake and get out of there immediately. You rush to the door and lock it behind yourselves. You're in a tunnel again, and this time there's no light at all. You move in complete darkness, putting your hand to the wall so that you know where to go. You walk like that for at least half an hour when, finally, you see some light. You run towards it and come across another massive door that requires a passcode. Luckily, there's a hint again, but there will be 2 questions appearing one by one. To get the passcode, you have to solve both of them and put the answers together. Ready? How many months have 28 days? All 12 of them, obviously. Okay, next one. Here's the sequence of letters. S, M, H, D, W. What are the other 2 letters? S stands for seconds, M for minutes, H for hours, D is for days, W is for weeks. So the next letters are M for months and Y for years. And the full passcode is 12MW. The door clicks and you're outside. Finally! There's actual air and sun. But before you start thinking about what happened and what to do next, a police officer comes up to you. With him, there are 2 ladies wearing paper bags over their heads. "Sir, are you Mr. Jones?" the police officer asks. You reply, "That's you exactly." However, the police officer looks suspicious. Well, we can't know for sure that you're not one of these criminals pretending to be someone else, so we have to test you. One of these ladies is your bride. Tell us which one it is. And now, you finally remember what happened. It was your wedding morning. You were about to get married, and then you found yourself in that dungeon. Well, the problem is that you haven't seen your wife-to-be wedding dress yet, so you can't even tell which one is the right one. Is there any other way to tell? Think carefully. With their faces covered, these girls are absolutely identical. You didn't need much time. You noticed that one of the girls is wearing a wedding ring already. However, you and your bride aren't married yet, so she's not supposed to have one. And the one who doesn't have it is yours. Congratulations! The girl removes the bag, and you see that it's really her. Right behind you, the door opens and the vampires walk out. You're about to start screaming, but they take off their wigs and they turn out to be your friends. So, was it all a prank? Well, yeah, it was. But don't be mad. You had fun, right? Well, most of the time. A businessman arrived at his office and found that some very important documents had disappeared from his desk. Police suspect 3 people, Amy, Carla, and Mike. Each of them said, however, that they hadn't even been to the office. Who was lying? It was Mike. Both Amy and Carla are wearing high heels, while the dirty footprints on the floor were clearly left by sneakers. The king of a faraway kingdom was getting old and started to think of announcing his heir. He had 3 daughters, each with their own virtues, and the king couldn't decide which of them would be the best queen. Then one of his counselors suggested an idea. The king should give each of his daughters a teapot filled with water, and the daughter whose pot started to boil first would be proclaimed the heiress. When the day of decision came, the 3 princesses started boiling water. 2 of them really wanted to become the next queen, but in the end, the one that didn't want the throne won the competition. How did that happen? The 2 princesses who lost were a bit too eager. They constantly raised the lids of their pots to check if the water was boiling. And the third didn't care, so the water in her pot began boiling first. In the busiest street of a big city, there was a shoe cleaner who got lots of clients. He offered his services to everyone for free, but anybody who stopped and took his offer left him money before heading off again anyway. Why did they do that? He cleaned only one shoe for free, and if the client wanted their second shoe cleaned, they had to pay. Aaron was a poor teacher in a rural school. On the 13th of February, the day before St. Valentine's, he unexpectedly received a letter saying that his rich great-aunt had left him a huge inheritance. The next day, 3 of his colleagues, Sarah, Carrie, and Martha, sent him love letters. Can you tell who was genuinely in love with him and who was only pretending to take advantage of his newfound wealth? Carrie was the honest one. She's wearing a necklace with A and C engraved on it, which stands for Aaron and Carrie. Clearly, Aaron gave it to her as a gift because they'd been dating even before he got the inheritance. Jonathan spent several days in a hospital, although he never even entered the place through any doors. What's more, when he was released, he was perfectly healthy, but still had to be carried out of there. Why? Because Jonathan was a newborn baby. A village in the far north has found itself in big trouble. Someone has poisoned the lake, which was the only source of drinking water for the dwellers. When the police arrived to the place, all they saw was a set of weird prints on the snow. There were footprints between two parallel lines. They didn't know the name of the culprit, but they at least knew who they had to look for. Can you follow their logic? The police were looking for a person in a wheelchair and their helper. The wheels would leave those parallel lines, and the helper had to push the chair and would leave the footprints. Jack and his business partner decided to celebrate a very profitable contract they'd recently signed. They both loved hiking, so Jack suggested going to the Alps for a climbing trip. His partner gladly agreed, and Jack took it upon himself to arrange their little vacation. However, the trip went terribly wrong, and Jack's partner got lost in the mountains. Jack couldn't find him, and neither could the rescuers. But upon returning home, Jack was arrested after the police got a call from his travel agent. Why? The travel agent told the investigators that Jack only bought one return ticket for himself. For his partner, he bought a one-way ticket. Someone had broken into Mr. Jenkins' house and taken all his valuables while he was on vacation. His neighbor, Mr. Brown, called the police to tell them about it because he'd witnessed the event. He said he'd come back from work late and saw the lights were on in Mr. Jenkins' house. Mr. Brown knew his neighbor was away, so he carefully approached the window to look inside. The glass was frosted over, so he breathed on it to melt the ice and saw a man in a gray hoodie stuffing valuables into a blue backpack. Then Mr. Brown ran home and called the police. The officers listened to the story and immediately arrested Mr. Brown. Why? The dutiful neighbor had one detail wrong in his story. Windows become frosted over from inside. Then how could he have melted the frost with his breath from the outside? One rainy morning, Miss Riley left her house in a hurry and forgot some very important documents on her desk. She came back in an hour, but the document was gone. She gathered everyone who was in the house that day and questioned them. Ryan, the cook, said he'd been preparing dinner and didn't even set foot in Miss Riley's room. Sal, the janitor, said he'd only come in, turned on the lights to see if cleaning was needed, and left. Rose, the gardener, said she'd been busy watering the plants outside and didn't come into the house at all. Who took the document? It was a collective job. All of Miss Riley's employees were guilty. It was early in the day, so it would have made more sense for the cook to prepare lunch. For the same reason, the janitor wouldn't have needed to turn on the lights. And it was also raining, so the gardener wouldn't have to water the plants outside. There are 4 glasses on the table in front of you. Each of them is filled with water to the exact same level, and in each of them, there's an object. In the first glass, there's a baseball. In the second, a pencil eraser. In the third, a wristwatch. And in the fourth, a paperclip. Which of the glasses has more water than the rest? The fourth glass. If you take out the objects from their glasses, the water level will drop because they'll stop taking up the volume. The paperclip is the smallest object, so there's more water in that glass. Humanity is coming to its end. The last man on Earth is going about his day, working the field, gathering wood for the fire, making supplies for the winter. At the end of the day, he's getting ready for bed when he hears a knock on the door. He isn't scared and goes to open it. Who's standing behind the door? A woman. Mark's best friend, James, lives in another city, and his birthday is soon, so Mark decides to send him a present. James loves playing golf, and Mark buys him an expensive golf club. But there's a problem. The best postal service in his town only accepts packages no bigger than 3 feet to a side, and the club is 4 feet long. Still, Mark found a solution. What was it? Mark bought a square box with a side of 3 feet and put the club inside it diagonally. Jenny's sister goes to a private party to which Jenny wasn't invited. Envious, Jenny still decides to go, but finds out there's a guard at the entrance who asks all visitors for a password. She hides around the corner and eavesdrops on the other guests. One couple approaches the guard and he says 11. They reply 9. And he lets them pass. The next visitor is a guy to whom the guard says 6. He answers with 4, and the guard lets him through. Certain that she gets the principal, Jenny comes out of the shadow. The guard looks at her and says 110. Jenny replies 108, but the guard doesn't let her through. What's the correct answer? The answer's 90. If you write 11 in Roman characters, it'll look like this, XI. 9 is its mirror image, IX. Same with 6 and 4. With 110, it's CX, and 90 is XC. A man came to the police claiming that a very valuable briefcase was forcefully taken from him in the street. When an officer asked the man if he could describe the person who had done it, the man said he was wearing a full motorcycle outfit, leather pants, a thick leather jacket, and a helmet. The culprit tore the briefcase from the man's hands, hopped on his motorbike, and left. Still, the man noticed the criminal drop something and picked it up. Turned out it was his glasses. The man took them to the police as evidence. After a few more questions, the man was taken into custody for fraud. Why? If the culprit was wearing a helmet, then how could he have lost his glasses? A married couple were staying at a hotel. One night, they had an argument, and the man went out to cool off but forgot both his room key and his phone. When he returned, he saw an unconscious man lying on the floor next to his and his wife's room door. The police arrived and questioned them both. The wife told them she'd heard a knock on the door and thought it was her husband, so she opened it right away. Then the man pushed her, so she smacked him on the head with a candle holder and closed the door from inside. Still, the police took her into custody. Why? The woman thought it was her husband, but still approached the door with a candle holder in her hands. That means she wanted to hit him with it in the first place. Lights out. A wet mystery. Mother and father living in the north of Canada went shopping, leaving their teenage son home. He said he wanted to mount his new TV on the wall. They were halfway to the mall when Mother remembered she'd left the iron plugged in. They returned and found the house freezing cold. Mother turned on central heating again, and they left for good. When they came back after a while, there was water dripping from the ceiling on the first floor, and on the second, their son was lying unconscious in a pool of water on the floor, and the TV was hanging on the wall askew. Can you guess what happened? The young man hauled a big chunk of ice upstairs to stand on it while he mounted the TV. He turned off the heat for the ice to stay frozen, but when his mom turned it on again, the chunk melted and the boy slipped and fell. A code number. A detective who had been mere days away from cracking an international criminal gang has suddenly gone missing. But he was smart enough to try and help the investigators in their search by leaving one clue, more specifically, a special code: 710-57735-34-5508-517718. The police have 3 prime suspects: John, Bill, and Adam. Can you break the detective's code and help the police arrest the right criminal? The numbers in the detective's code represent letters. If you read the message upside down, you'll notice that it says, "Bill is boss. He sells oil." So, Bill's your guy. Cuff him, boys. A lousy alibi. A man had been strolling through the park when someone suddenly hit him on the back of the head. Witnesses say the culprit had brown hair, blue eyes, and was wearing a baggy suit. The main suspect is Sean Baker, who matches the description perfectly. The police interrogate Sean, who gives his account of what happened. "I was just hanging out in the park, and I saw this man walking along the pathway. Then some other guy suddenly sprang out of the shrubs right in front of him and hit him. I ran home as fast as I could." The police ask him to give a description of the attacker. He answers, he had a red mustache, red hair, and a baggy suit on. However, one of the investigators says Sean is lying. How does he know? Sean claims that the attacker came up in front of the man, but that's complete nonsense. The man had been hit on the back of his head. Strange noises. Amy and Carl were lying in bed at night when they heard weird noises from their daughter Stacy's bedroom. Amy went to see and carefully opened the door, but saw her teenage daughter fast asleep and the noise stopped. The next night, it all happened again, and in the morning, Amy found a snakeskin lying under Emily's bed. Alarmed, the family searched the whole house but couldn't find the snake that left it. Still, the sound persisted every night. Can you guess where the snake was hiding? It was in the walls. At night, when it was quiet, the snake would crawl out in the open, but when everyone woke up again, it hid inside the pipes and between the boards. A careless granddaughter. Sally went to the drugstore to get some meds for her grandma. The pharmacist looked at the prescription and handed her 4 identical pills, 2 for pressure and another 2 for her legs. He warned Sally that Grandma should take 1 of each kind a few hours before bedtime. The girl nodded and dropped the pills into her bag. As she got home, Sally realized what she did wrong. There were 4 completely identical pills in her bag, all mixed up. But when it was time for Grandma to take the pills, Sally figured a way out. What did she do? The only way out of this situation is to split all the pills in half and take 1/2 of each pill. This way, Grandma will definitely get the right meds. The chicken matter. Sally's grandma, yep, that same one, got 3 hens that gave her 3 eggs in 3 days. When Sally found this out, she decided selling eggs could be a good business. So she got her grandma 12 more hens of the same kind. Sally can't wait to get her profit, who wouldn't be? But she's not that great at math. Can you help her figure out how many eggs Grandma will get in the next 15 days? 3 hens brought Grandma 3 eggs in 3 days. It means 1 hen brings 1 egg once in 3 days. So it'll give 5 eggs in 15 days. Now that we've got 15 hens, we can easily multiply the numbers and get 75 eggs in 15 days. A window to freedom. Jack is thrown in a cell with a dirt floor and only one window positioned so high no one could reach it. The cell is empty except for a shovel. It's dry and hot in there, but Jack won't get any food or drink anytime soon. He has only 2 days to break out of his cell. Digging a tunnel would take at least a week. How should Jack escape? He should use the shovel to make a pile of dirt under the window, climb on it, and escape from the cell. Seriously, who secures prisoners this way? Back to school. On the first day of the school year, a geography teacher vanished. The police had as many as 4 suspects. They were the gardener, the math teacher, the coach, and the school principal. The sticking point was that they all had alibis. The gardener was cutting bushes. The math teacher was holding a mid-year test. The coach was playing basketball. The principal was in the office with parents of one of the students. Despite this, the culprit was arrested immediately. Can you guess how the police solved the mystery? The math teacher was lying. According to his words, he was holding a mid-year test, but the geography teacher disappeared on the first day of the school year. Late delivery. A lonely old man lived in his house in the suburbs of a city. He led a quiet life and never left his dwelling for long. It was a midsummer Friday when the mail carrier walked by and called out for the man. There was no answer coming from inside the house. The carrier looked into the window and, oh no! He saw the house was a total mess, and the owner was nowhere to be seen. When the police arrived, they found a Tuesday's newspaper, 2 bottles of warm milk, and 1 bottle of cold milk. The next day, the robber was arrested. How did the police find out who it was so quickly? It was obviously the mail carrier. He knew that no one in that house would read a newspaper on Wednesday or Thursday. That's why he only came on Friday. There's chemistry between them. A famous chemist went missing. There was no evidence found except for a piece of paper with the names of chemical substances on it. On the day he disappeared, the chemist had only 3 visitors: his wife, Mary, his nephew, Nicholas, and his friend, Jonathan. The police looked at the note and arrested the culprit right away. Who was it, and how did they find it out? It was Nicholas, the chemist's nephew. If you combine the short names of the chemical substances on the paper, you'll get his name: Nicolas. An untouchable car. A man was found unconscious in his own car. The police found a rock near the man, and it was obvious he had been hit on the head with it. But the car windows were intact, and the door was locked. How could someone throw a rock into the car without damaging it? The car was a convertible, and when the rock was thrown, the roof had been down. A public collapse. One city was having a rough patch. Its schools, hotels, and public transport weren't functioning because of a strike that had already lasted for several weeks. One night, someone hit the mayor of the city over the head. The man was rushed to a hospital, and the police arrested 3 suspects. Brandon stated that he had been walking along the street when he heard someone scream, but it was too dark and he couldn't see anything. John confirmed that he had heard a call for help as well, but he was too scared to check it out. As for Dylan, he claimed that he had been waiting for a bus at a bus stop and hadn't heard anything. Who attacked the mayor? It was Dylan. He couldn't be waiting for a bus since they hadn't been running for several weeks because of the strike. A punctured tire. A man was driving his car all the way from New York to Boston. Only at the end of the trip did he discover that one of his car's tires had been punctured from the very beginning. Still, he managed to reach his destination successfully, and his journey wasn't affected by this problem. How is it possible? The punctured tire was the spare one. A tricky ploy. A big company director returned from lunch and discovered that his safe had been broken into and all the money had been taken from it. Inside, he saw a note, "Don't even consider calling the police." Well, the man did exactly the opposite. He called the police and told them he suspected that his half-brother David was to blame. One of the police officers visited David and asked him several questions, but the man showed the detective his right arm, which was in a cast. "Look, I broke my arm just a couple of days ago. I couldn't get into my brother's office or write a note." The police officer had nothing to do but leave. He decided to have lunch in a cafe across the road from David's apartment. Half an hour later, the detective noticed the man leaving home. At that very moment, the detective realized that the brother was guilty after all and rushed to arrest him. How did he understand? The police officer noticed that while leaving the apartment, David had the cast not on his right but on his left arm. Is he smart enough? One day, a cute new guy, Tom, joined Katie's class. All her classmates had a crush on him, and he clearly knew about his popularity. But whatever they did, Tom didn't pay attention to any of their signs of affection, and his eyes were only for Katie. She also liked him a lot, but she wanted to make sure he wasn't just cute but smart too. So once, when they stayed alone in the classroom, Katie walked up to the whiteboard, took the marker, and wrote 128 square root sign E 980. Tom looked at it for a few seconds and then smiled, and Katie knew he cracked her riddle. Can you? Mathematically, this riddle doesn't make any sense, but if you wipe the upper half of the whole expression, you'll get "I love you." Takes a bit of wit, huh? A fired manager. Mark, Jim, and Bob work as managers in the same office. One day, one of them is fired, and one gets a promotion. The remaining manager wants to resign at first, but then changes his mind. You know that the one who's fired is older than the rest and single. Jim's younger than the manager who has decided to stay at work, and he doesn't know Bob's wife. Who's fired? It's not Jim because he's younger than the manager who stays. It's also not Bob because he's married. It means that Mark has been fired, Jim has got a promotion, and Bob has decided to stay in his position. An antique dealer's riddle. David was a famous antique dealer in his town, but there were loads of people who envied him. The man had a young, beautiful daughter, Lisa. One evening, when the antiquarian was busy in his workshop, his phone rang. A man told him that they had David's daughter. If he wanted to see her again, he had to give his jewelry collection to a man waiting at the doors. It wasn't the first time someone was threatening David. That's why he requested to talk to his daughter. He asked her just one question. "I have 2 hands, but I can't scratch myself. What am I?" When David heard no answer, he said, "It's not my daughter," and hung up. What's the answer to this riddle? Lisa would know that her father was talking about a clock. A driver's problem. A man was driving along a countryside road when one of his car tires burst. While changing it, he accidentally lost all 4 wheel nuts. The road was deserted, and the driver was afraid he'd have to spend many hours waiting for someone who could give him a hand. But a kid passing by his vehicle said something that helped the man solve his problem. What advice did the child give the driver? The kid told the man to remove 1 nut from each of the remaining wheels and use them to secure the new tire. This way, the man could get to the nearest service station. Notorious shoplifters. Detectives had been trying to catch 2 infamous shoplifters for several years, and finally, after another case, they managed to capture one of the culprits. Police officers were interrogating him for 2 days, but he said nothing about the goods and money they'd taken or his accomplices' whereabouts. Still, in the next 24 hours, the detectives managed to find the place where the stuff was hidden. It was a small house in the suburbs. In its basement, there was a man who seemed very excited to see the police. He said he'd been trapped in the house already for a week. Nobody visited him, and he was starting to run out of food. That's why he was so happy to read the good news in the paper. The police officers immediately realized it was the accomplice they'd been looking for. How? If he was trapped in the basement, how could he get a hold of fresh newspapers? 2 buckets. You have 2 buckets of water. In the first bucket, the water is heated up to 100 degrees Fahrenheit. In the second bucket, the water is cooled down to minus 100 degrees. You need to simultaneously drop 2 coins into the buckets. Which coin will reach the bottom faster? The coin thrown into the warm water. The other won't sink at all because the water in the bucket is frozen. Let it go. Important documents. John, the director of a big company, managed to persuade his partners to sign a super important agreement. He then put this document into a folder and left it on the table in his private office. When he returned to work the next morning, the folder was gone. Surprise, surprise. John gathered all the employees who were in the office at that time and questioned them. The cleaning lady said she had been busy washing the floor and hadn't paid attention to anything around. The designer explained he hadn't left his working place even once. What's more, being an artist, he didn't have any interest in agreement documents. The accountant admitted that he had entered John's office to have some documents signed, but once he noticed there was no one inside, he immediately left. Who took the folder with the agreement? It was the designer. Otherwise, how would he know that the missing folder had an agreement inside? Socks puzzle. Matthew wears either only black or only white socks. One evening, he's in a hurry, getting ready for a romantic dinner with his girlfriend. Suddenly, the power goes out. The guy has 10 white and 10 black socks in his drawer, but all of them are mixed. If it's completely dark in the room and Matthew can't see anything, how many socks must he pull out of the drawer to get 2 matching ones? Just 3. In a set of 3 socks, he's bound to have 2 socks of the same color. A smart teacher. One day, a teacher decided to give her students a test, but all of them refused to take it. She could give detention for skipping the test to only one student. All of them knew each other's names. If a student knew they were going to get detention, they agreed to take the test. How could the teacher make all the students participate? She told them that she'd give detention to the student whose name came first alphabetically. Then this person wouldn't skip the test. The next person on the list wouldn't skip as well, and so on until the end of the list. Hidden treasure. Martha really loved her little sister Mary, but once she had to go away for the whole day. She didn't want Mary to miss her too much or get bored. That's why she organized a treasure hunt for the girl. Before Martha left, she gave her little sister a map. She told the girl if she followed the instructions, she'd find a real treasure. Mary followed the map to a T. She made the exact number of steps and turned at all the right spots. She eventually got to the end and started digging. The little girl dug and dug, but still found nothing. Naturally, she was pretty upset. When Martha got back, she took the map and almost immediately found the treasure. How so? Martha made one major mistake when she was drawing the map. Her steps were a lot bigger than Mary's. That's why the younger girl couldn't find the spot where Martha had hidden the treasure. What happened to Prom King? Soon after Bob became king on prom night, he vanished. Poof, like that. His teachers were looking for him everywhere. They believed there were 3 people who could be behind his disappearance. Bob's rival Joe said he had been dancing all night with his girlfriend and hadn't seen Bob. Bob's classmate Dennis claimed he hadn't been feeling well, so he spent all night in the lounge. Laura, Bob's secret admirer, said she had been counting the votes for the election. The teachers knew who was behind the disappearance right away. It was Laura. Bob had already become prom king. She didn't need to count the votes. Sam's birthday. Sam is a truly special young lady. She was just 17 the day before yesterday. Next year, she'll be 20 already. What's her secret? Sam's not a time traveler or anything. She was born on December 31st. So if today is January 1st, it's correct to say that she was 17 the day before yesterday. She turned 18 the next day. She'll be 19 on the last day of this year, and next year, she'll be 20.